If I told you the CIA spent taxpayer money investigating magic, you'd probably laugh. You'd think I was talking about a metaphorical magic. I'm not. I'm talking about telekinesis, the ability to move, bend, or break physical objects using only the power of your human mind. You've heard of Project Stargate, especially if you listened to that episode of mine. That was episode 1 of this series. That was about seeing. That was passive. Today we're going to talk about the CIA files that deal with doing. We're going to be talking about Psychotronics. We have the documents where the CIA put a famous magician in a sealed room to see if he could warp metal. We have the intelligence reports on Soviet machines, actual generators that claim to store psychic energy like a battery to kill enemies at a distance. We have the file where the US government watched a woman stop the heartbeat of a living creature just by staring at it. The document codes are real, the quotes are impossible to believe, but they are there. Welcome to the Telekinesis files. Let's start with the most famous wizard of the 1970s, Uri Geller. Now, I know what you're thinking, the spoonbender, the guy on late night TV. Yes, that guy. The Israeli Jew. In 1973, the CIA didn't think he was a joke. They were terrified he was a weapon. If a man could bend a spoon with his mind, can he pinch a fuel line in a nuclear missile? Can he crush a microchip inside a KGB computer? They took him to the Stanford Research Institute, also known as SRI, for a series of highly classified experiments from August 4th to August 11th in 1973. This is all available in Document CIA-RDP96-00787R000400090010-4. The scientists placed Geller in a double-walled, shielded room. They used randomly selected drawings to test his telepathy and ability to perceive hidden objects. They drew a firecracker. Geller drew a drum. Close enough. They drew a bunch of grapes. Geller drew a bunch of grapes. They drew a camel. Geller drew a horse. But it was the metal bending and the compass moving that freaked them out. The conclusion of this document is one of the most insane sentences in government history. I'm going to say it out loud. Ready? Start quote. As a result of Geller's success in this experimental period, we consider that he has demonstrated his paranormal perceptual ability in a convincing and unambiguous manner. End quote. Convincing and unambiguous? That isn't a tabloid. That is the Central Intelligence Agency. They go on to say, quote, no system of shielding, including a Faraday cage, effectively degraded the signal, end quote. They are admitting that whatever Geller was doing, the laws of physics, at least the ones they knew, couldn't stop it. This document proves that for a brief moment in 1973, the U.S. government operated on the premise that magic was real, and if magic was real, they needed to know if the Soviets had better wizards than we did. This brings us to the most obscure sci-fi part of the archive, the psychotronic generators. While the US was studying people like Geller, the Soviets and their satellite states were trying to build machines. We need to look at the Defense Intelligence Agency report DST-1810S-387-75 titled Soviet and Czechoslovakian Parapsychology Research. This report details the work of a Czech inventor named Robert Pavlita. Pavlita claimed he didn't have psychic powers himself. Instead, he built psychotronic generators. These were small, weirdly shaped metal objects made of steel, bronze, and copper. The theory was you stare at the object, you focus your mental energy into it, and the object charges up, and then you can release that energy later to do work. The DIA report details exactly what these things could supposedly do. Quote, Robert has stated that his generators can be charged by one person and discharged by another. The energy can be reflected, refracted, and polarized, end quote. Refracted and polarized. They're talking about thought energy, like it's a laser beam. But what could these generators do? The report describes an experiment where a generator was pointed at a sealed container with vials in it. Quote, files placed in the gap were killed instantly, end quote. The DIA analysts weren't laughing. They were analyzing the strategic threat. If you can store death energy in a small metal box, can you smuggle it into the White House? Can you put a psychotronic battery in a briefcase and give the president a heart attack? The report concludes with a chilling assessment. Quote, the Soviets and Czechs are apparently investigating the application of this energy for military purposes, including the disruption of human behavior and lethal effects, end quote. This is the magic gap. The U.S. was terrified that the Soviets were building AK-47s that fired thoughts. If you think the generators are weird, wait until you meet Nina. She was the Soviet Union's star psychic. She was a housewife who discovered that when she got angry, things around her house started moving. The CIA and DIA monitored her closely. In that same report, they detail an experiment that is pure nightmare fuel. The Soviet scientists wanted to see if her psychokinetic power worked on living tissue. They took the heart of a frog. They placed it in a solution, kept beating by electrodes. They told Nina to stop it. The report details the process. As she focused, her own heart rate spiked to 240 beats per minute. The energy in the room shifted. She focused on the heartbeat changed speed, and then it stopped completely. She killed the heart with her mind. The report notes that when the scientists tried to restart the heart with electrical shocks, they couldn't. It was dead. The U.S. intelligence assessment, quote, there is a possibility that such ability could be applied to human targets, end quote. Human targets. This is why the CIA files on this stuff exist. They weren't looking for enlightenment. They were looking for the ultimate silent assassination weapon. If Nina could stop a frog heart from 3 feet away, could she stop a general's heart from crossing a negotiating table? This fear drove millions of dollars in funding. Millions. So how were the Soviets measuring this force? They used something called photography. We have a document CIA-RDP96-00787R000400090010-4. The Soviets discovered that if you place an object on a photographic plate and run a high voltage current through it, you get a glowing aura around the object. To the Soviets, this wasn't just electricity, this was bioplasma, the physical manifestation of the soul life force. The CIA documents show the U.S. scrambling to replicate this. They were terrified the Soviets had found a way to measure a human's emotional state, health, or even their intentions just by taking a photo or of their fingerprint. The document quotes a Soviet scientist as saying, quote, the bioplasm body is the template for the physical body, end quote. The implication, if you can damage the bioplasma, the aura, the physical body will get sick and die. The CIA was investigating whether the Soviets were developing weapons that attacked your aura before they attacked your body. It sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons, but in 1975 it was Defense Department policy analysts. So why did we stop hearing about this? Why aren't we fighting wars with psychotronic generators today? Well, the official story is that the U.S. government couldn't replicate the lethal results. They could bend some spoons, they could get some weird statistics and card guessing, but they never built a death ray. However, the documents we read today, specifically the Geller, convincing and unambiguous memo, prove that for a significant period, the smartest people in the intelligence community believed that magic was real. They didn't dismiss it as a trick, they classified it. Think about that. They didn't put the Uri Geller file in the trash, they put it in a safe. If it was fake, why hide it for 30 years? Was it to save face, or was it because they found something they couldn't control and decided the world wasn't ready for weaponized magic? We've covered the mind, Stargate. We've covered the monsters, Yeti. We've covered the magic, Psychotronics, but there is one final frontier of the CIA archives that is perhaps the most disturbing of all. Next, we are going to look at the silent weapons for quiet wars. We are digging into the files on acoustic weapons, the Havana Syndrome precursors, the government's attempt to use sound to drive people insane without them ever knowing they are being attacked. If you want to know why your ears might be ringing, hit that subscribe button. Check the description for the link to the generator blueprints. Maybe don't build one at home. I'll see you in the archives.